Well, if it doesn't show you how much I love this movie, I brought the Marvel sweatshirt back out. After a disastrous Phase 4 outside of a handful of projects, and a less than stellar response to Ant-Man 3, which kicked off Phase 5 of the MCU, Marvel desperately needed something to bring the fans back and restore a bit of good grace with the cinematic universe here. That's why our favorite galaxy-saving a-holes are back for their third and final adventure as this team. And I am very excited to talk about it. Hi everybody, Anthony from Awesome Anthony Productions, and today I'm going to give you my review of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. But before we get started, please leave a like, subscribe, and ring that bell so that you never miss any of my new content. Now let's get into it. Guardians Volume 3 picks up with the team chilling at their new base on Nowhere like we saw in the holiday special, as we follow Rocket walking through Nowhere checking up on the other Guardians, until he finally lands on Peter Quill, who is completely shit-faced in the bar because he's nursing his depression after losing Gamora during the events of Infinity War. That's when Adam Warlock shows up to wreak some havoc, and one of the Guardians ends up mortally wounded. I'm not going to spoil who it is, but if you've seen the trailers, you could probably guess. This throws the Guardians into crisis mode as they have to rush off planet to find a way to fix this as soon as possible, but that leads them right into the crosshairs of the High Evolutionary, a mad scientist that spends his days experimenting on animals with horrific tests to try to improve their intelligence and eventually create the perfect society. Oh, and he's also Rocket's creator.
Well, I didn't ask to get made. I didn't ask to be torn apart and put back together over and over and turned into some little monster. Rocket, no one's calling you a monster.
And he's a total psychopath with no remorse and no love for his creations, as we see during some tragic and truly harrowing flashbacks to Rocket's backstory, and the Guardians are gonna have to face off against him. Honestly, comparing this to each of Marvel's big tentpole films from the last few years, this movie feels completely different for one huge reason. It has a ton of heart, something that's been lacking from recent MCU entries, but this series has had in spades.
We are Groot.
Doctor Strange, Thor Love and Thunder, Eternals, Ant-Man 3, they all felt very cynical, and like Disney was just trying to push them down the conveyor belt to make a deadline.
It's my money and I need it now!
But with James Gunn at the helm of these three movies, he does what he's always done best. He makes each of these characters feel real. It makes you very emotionally invested in them. He gives each of these characters a chance to shine, to the point where you're emotionally invested in a talking tree man and a talking raccoon. And it's no different here, especially with what we get out of Rocket's backstory. The rest of the film is exciting, funny, and emotional, but the real emotion, drama, and dark tone of this film come out during Rocket's backstory. And these scenes rival some of the best drama the MCU has offered, with how ultimately tragic and emotional they end up being. And this all just really solidified Rocket Raccoon is one of my favorite characters in the MCU.
Don't call me a raccoon! I'm sorry. I meant Trash Panda.
Every single one of these flashback scenes is written, acted, voiced, and animated perfectly, with nothing but talent, love, and respect. It takes this story seriously with the weight it deserves. And so much praise needs to go to not only Bradley Cooper with his amazing performance, but Linda Cardellini as well, playing Lila, an otter that Rocket ends up getting trapped with. Rocket's story is the heart of this movie, and the way it goes from tragically heartbreaking to kind of uplifting by the end of the movie just left me a mess of tears. Also, just a small warning to the more sensitive animal lovers out there and parents with young children, the scenes involving animal testing and abuse can get very intense, upsetting, and honestly kind of scary, so just keep that in mind before you go. And even outside of those incredibly poignant flashbacks, the rest of the film is really damn solid, and we can give so much thanks to James Gunn as writer and director, the amazing cast that we've grown to know and love since 2014, and the absolutely fantastic villain. Even though the story could have been tightened up just a little bit, and one character in particular could have used a bit more love in terms of the script. Now I promise I'll get back to sucking this movie's that's a little vulgar even for this channel. I promise I'll get back to kissing this movie's ass soon, but I just want to get these two very small complaints out of the way. Number one, even though this movie is an incredibly exciting, fun, and emotional film, it's just a little too long at 2.5 hours. Don't get me wrong, I was never bored at all during the runtime. The humor is funny, the action is exciting and shot in creative ways with mostly great CGI, and the constant back and forth banter with our team that we've come to know over the years is all a blast. But that being said, during one part of the movie, it was hard to not feel like the Guardians were kind of spinning their wheels doing busy work during one extended sequence where the crew has to break into a space station that's all like fleshy, it's made out of organic matter. It's a very cool sequence in and of itself with all of those fun aspects that I mentioned earlier, but it honestly has no real bearing on the rest of the story, and when it was over, it kind of just felt like a waste of time. It kind of reminded me a lot of what The Mandalorian has done with a lot of their episodes recently, where it kind of felt like a video game objective, where they just went to go complete the objective and had to move on. There was no real importance to the whole thing. So that definitely could have been cut down or even cut out altogether, tighten this up a little bit and save on the runtime. But the writing, acting, visuals, everything in the scene is still solid, and I enjoyed it for what it was, despite the fact that it was a little unnecessary.
Was that really necessary?
But from there, we really dive deep into Rocket's story and tie that into the greater narrative with the High Evolutionary. And the complaint disappeared from my mind, so it probably won't bother you too much. And my only other complaint is what was done with Adam Warlock. After his badass intro, he kind of just takes a back seat and turns into just another dumb Marvel male character, there for pretty much just comic relief for most of the movie, which was kind of disappointing.
Hey! Where did you go, squirrel?
But I would have liked to see just a little bit more menace and intelligence from one of the few Marvel characters that I know from the comic books, considering this guy is basically the antithesis of Thanos. Though he does have some growth by the end of the movie, and Will Poulter is really giving it his all with his performance. And those are my only two complaints, so let's get back to what works in this movie, because so much of it does. Chris Pratt's Peter Quill is in prime form in this film, still bringing the humor and leadership, but showing us just how defeated he is without Zoe Saldana's Gamora. So when things happen and he has to step up to the bat and do whatever he can to save his friend, we see so many different layers come into his performance, and he does a great job bringing the humor, emotion, and especially the heroism. Oh my god, it was so great to see him be a hero in this movie and not just be constantly put down and saved by everybody else like a lesser Marvel movie would have done. And speaking of 2014's Gamora,
But then she came back. Came back a total dick.
Oh, please.
Zoe Saldana is clearly having a ton of fun playing an asshole version of that character, and her interactions with the rest of the crew are hilarious. Especially with Quill, who just is pining over her through the whole movie, meanwhile she has no idea who he is and is kind of creeped out by him. It really affected me when Gamora died in Infinity War, and I will admit that having her gone and having all of that motivation and character development gone with her kinda sucks, and it's one of my big complaints about this whole multiverse thing going on right now. But I really did enjoy her character here. She adds more humor to the script, but also allows for even more emotion, which we know that Gunn does so well in his scripts. I'm also really impressed with the way that Karen Gillan's Nebula and Palm Clementios Mantis were handled here. Nebula has really become a source of leadership and love within the Guardians, and after her character's journey throughout the MCU from her tragic origins to where she is now, it's really great to see her just be able to have fun and enjoy herself with her family. And she even has a few emotional moments that choke me up a bit. And Mantis, who really hasn't had much to do since her introduction in Guardians 2 besides be a tool for the rest of the team or be a source of comedy like every other character in these movies, she really shines here as the heart of the team that keeps them together through the whole movie. And just like other characters, she has a great culminating emotional arc that I thought was just fantastic. I'm also incredibly satisfied with Drax's arc in here as well. Dave Bautista was a natural fit for this role, but it seems like even he was kind of tired of playing the idiot.
I have sensitive nipples. This gross bug lady is my new friend. I'm sure I'm invisible.
Hi, Drax.
I'll do you one better. Why is Gamora?
And after the first one, it seemed like that's all that Gunn and the Russo brothers were writing him as. There's still some of that here in some scenes, but in many other ones, we see a deeper side to Drax, and where he ends up and what they decided to do with him is very heartwarming and a fitting end to that character. No spoilers with me saying it, by the way. They've said that this is going to be the last Guardians movie with this exact team, so. The rest of the side characters are all great with their moments to shine too, especially Sean Gunn as Kraglin as he learns to use Yondu's Yaka arrow, and Maria Bakalava's Cosmo, who has a great recurring joke with a badass payoff, and they both get to come in and help the Guardians when it matters the most. And Groot, though he doesn't have as much to do here as other films, is still perfectly voiced by Vin Diesel with a surprising amount of emotion and range just coming from those 3 repeated words over and over again.
Oh, by the way, this is a friend of mine, Tree.
I am Groot.
I am Steve Rogers.
And just like every other character here, he has a great emotional scene at the end of the film. Last, but absolutely not least, we have our villain, the High Evolutionary, played by, oh man, I hope I pronounced this right, Chukwudi Iwuji. Holy shit, is this dude scary and intimidating.
My sacred mission is to create the perfect society.
Iwuji brings a level of fierce intensity to this mad scientist that is so well done, he never even approaches the line of over the top that many lesser performers probably would have hit pretty early in this film. Everything he does is so evil and calculated with a callousness and narcissism that makes him just so hateable, but in the best of ways. I mean, he was scary, he was incredibly evil, he committed some absolutely despicable acts, and his deep connection to Rocket adds so much tension and drama. If Marvel can't figure out their shit with Jonathan Majors, pull some multiversal crap and make this guy Kang, because I feel like he would do an amazing job. Overall, I just really enjoyed this movie. Though it's a little long thanks to a fun but rather pointless sequence near the beginning, and doesn't give my boy Adam Warlock enough love, this is the Swan Song that the Guardians of the Galaxy deserve, giving us an emotional and poignant story that has refreshing surprisingly low stakes and is very personal, and features a fantastic soundtrack, hilarious dialogue between all these characters we know and love, and killer effects and action scenes. One in particular involving a hallway that is so creative, fun, and surprisingly gory that I enjoyed every second of it. Go check this movie out, you won't be disappointed. Though you may want to bring some tissues and leave the more sensitive animal lovers at home. And that's my review of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. If you like this review, you know exactly what to do. Please leave a like to help me out with the algorithm so I can reach a bigger audience. You can also comment with your thoughts below, hit the subscribe button so that you never miss any of my content, ring the bell to get notifications, and while you're at it, you can click or tap on these cards here. I'll take you to my review of Beau is Afraid, or just over to my channel where you can check out my reviews, my shorts, and my old shit. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I will see you on the next one.